Mob Psycho 100, one of one's wonderful works. I distinctly remember how highly anticipated this show was when it was being built up as the next big thing following One Punch Man. I can only imagine how the hype feels to have two of your works adapted to a mainstream platform in back-to-back years, and have almost equal hype to both of them. And in my opinion, and frankly a lot of others, it managed to live up to that hype. Mob Psycho 100 not only is a beautifully animated show with fantastic pacing and storytelling, it is also a genuinely touching analysis on puberty and emotional intelligence, with strong allegories from its premise. And what is that premise? Shigeo Kageyama is your average middle school boy, with a plain face, unassuming stature, and inordinately milquetoast opinions, hence the nickname Mob. However, outside of his identity of a boring middle schooler, he works part-time as an exorcist in training at a skeevy, less than reputable spirit medium consultation office. He works with his master, a con medium named Reagan, to ward off evil spirits and get that $3 an hour pay. But as the stresses of being a typical student with a lovesick crush and a temp worker at a highly stressful job weigh on him, Mob has to deal with potentially going 100%, letting loose his bottled emotions and excess psychic powers simultaneously. Facing other psychics, peers who pressure him on menial stuff, and working for a sort of stubborn taskmaster of a boss, Mob goes about his life one born day at a time. Mob Psycho 100 is what I consider an essential anime, a show everyone should try to see regardless of your stance on anime, genre, style, or writing preference. Namely, because it comes off as a story first and a spectacle second, and it does both phenomenally. What I mean by that is that anime is a visual medium, not just literally but literary too. You have to be able to show the story and atmosphere through animation, editing, and design rather than mostly tell them. And there are shows that prefer just telling you what's happening, and there are those that over-accentuate their visions and sacrifice for a comprehensive narrative. Mob Psycho navigates that balance perfectly, and still manages to achieve the best results of both elements. The story itself is fine, and employs decent techniques in narrating the life of an ordinary boy, but it's the engagement of the clever metaphors in said boy's life story that make the meaning of it all the more impactful. For example, it'd be easy enough to show us that Mob has this crush and tries everything in himself to impress her with his unique abilities. However, the story diverges from that easy route and lets us experience that his talents are just as plain as they are dangerous, and it's his own self-reflection from learning from his pragmatic boss and his habit of staying calm that he seeks to improve where he lacks rather than exploit his gift. That's both a very touching philosophy on self-betterment and restraint, and an astute critique on how easily some people are willing to coast by on their simple aptitudes instead of honing their own skill sets. This show is full of these interesting double entendre and sometimes triple entendres that peer into the lens of the human conditions of personal strength, emotional maturity, and spiritual growth beyond one's physical and mental capabilities. This is all while the story itself doesn't suffer from hefty dialogue, a crunched atmosphere, or needless airtime. A portion of that reasoning is due in part to the characters and how they handle their dilemmas, namely Mob, Reagan, Mob's brother, and the scheming spirit Dimple, though other characters achieve that likeness easily in their respective arcs too. Mob himself is one of the more recent realistic anime protagonists despite his caricatured personality and otherworldly powers. You see the humanity in his gentle mannerisms and lackadaisical way of speaking, in that he's just a genuinely nice kid who just needs a little guidance and a lot of growing. You easily feel how much of a burden he carries in restricting his emotions while also trying to fit in socially and maintaining a part-time job at his stage in life, in which, yeah, it's tough because he's still in middle school. He's far more mature than any ordinary middle schooler for a pretty sad reason, and it makes his situation more admirable and sympathetic. Then there's also Reagan, who's both funny and oddly wise in his bullshit that it's refreshing to see how much of a technically terrible person he is, yet isn't too far gone to be a bad role model. Pair that with Mob's brother Ritsu being a kind but cautious sibling versus the shrewd but honest Dimple, and you have a cast of colorful influences. And I think that's the overarching theme of the show. Influences. Puberty and emotional cognizance can be very hard topics to tackle for a multitude of reasons, and I think here they're addressed in genuine, funny, and relatable ways through these relationships between Mob and his friends. It's one of the better aspects of the whole collective. Another great part of it all is the animation. Holy smokes, does this look great. That's a rhetorical question, by the way, because the obvious answer is yes, which is funny because a majority of it isn't as polished. If anything, it's an acquired taste of style, being very doodly and reserved, adding to that bland charm. But when the animation kicks in, it goes beyond 100%, making for epic choreography, camera work, and expressive ambience. You really have to see it to believe it, and when you do, it makes a believer out of you. This extends to all of the openings where I think every single one of them is an absolute certified banger. Yeah, Mob Psycho is a rare instance where every opening scores 10 out of 10 for me, and it's well deserved. If you've seen and heard all three of them, then you know why. I'd say the only big criticism of it is that maybe they didn't utilize the villains better. I mean, they're cool, but that's really all you can say about them aside from maybe one or two. Which you could argue is fine enough because it is Mob's story, not a story about psychics, which personally I'm fine with. It's also weird that they didn't replace Reagan's English voice actor when they did for several characters, including Mob's, when they probably had good reason to, but hey, I'm not full on the details as to why, so it's whatever, I guess. And I suppose I should address the minor discourse of Mob Psycho 100 vs. One Punch Man, where few, and I emphasize few, people insist on one's domination over the other. Why? I mean, sure, they were authored by the same guy, but they're two completely different stories trying to relay two different narratives via two different methods, one through parody and another through serious writing. It's like if you compare Fullmetal Alchemist to Silver Spoon. I mean, sure you can do that, I guess, but why? They're achieving two separate goals, and work on their own without that Venn diagram. Ah, yes, clearly Silver Spoon is inferior because the characters don't even attempt to make cow-human hybrids. Well, regardless of that, alone, Mob Psycho 100 is just fantastic. It's a well-thought-out story with lovable characters, incredible animation, and themes with important messaging and impressive telling. It's truly one of those great shows that's nearly a decade of age, yet still feels timeless. Only time will tell when or if it will be declared a classic in the future, but my money is that it's already made those strides with a very satisfying finale. It's an anime to get you to go from 1 to 100, and it's a mind-bending experience every countdown.